In a strange world where people live under a system that grants them a blessing called rank, which is assigned when they turn 10, a boy named Errol eagerly awaited his special day. The rank determines a person's future and their role in life. On that day, his parents and sister celebrated his 10th birthday, imagining the amazing rank he would receive, while he seemed indifferent to the whole system. After breakfast, the family hurried to the place where the priest stood in front of the crowd, announcing the ranks of the children one by one. Some became blacksmiths, while others became cooks. His sister reminded him that ranks are influenced by the parents' ranks, and since his mother had achieved the rank of Saint of the Sword, and his father was a great sorcerer, he must be destined for something remarkable. When it was his turn, he walked calmly towards the priest, amid whispers from the attendees who were curious to see what legendary rank the Son of Heroes would receive. The priest placed his hand on Errol's forehead, waiting for the light that would signal his rank, but nothing happened. The man grew flustered, looked at him pityingly, and told him he was born without a rank. Days passed as his parents tried to lift his spirits, assuring him he wouldn't need to look for work and could stay with them at home as long as he wanted. However, the boy wasn't troubled by this. He explained that he had been training in fencing since he was little, and had sharpened his skills through continuous training under his strong mother's supervision. He knew that having the rank of a fencer would make things easier, but he believed he could carve his path with his sword and effort even without it. His family felt relieved, while he went out to rest a bit and heard a commotion coming from the training yard. He approached to see two boys sparring and noticed their fundamental weaknesses. However, just having the rank of fencer made them acceptable fighters. They noticed him standing there and asked why he was watching, so he told them he came to train, and they laughed mockingly, claiming that someone without a rank couldn't duel real fencers, and they began boasting about their swordplay. Errol didn't show any signs of admiration and asked if they wanted to spar with him. They thought he was joking but accepted the challenge. Before they started, one of them asked if he had the divine protection that every human is born with to ward off harm. He answered affirmatively. At that, his opponent prepared to fight him without fear. However, the boy confidently stated that he didn't need such protection to defeat kids like them. The fencer, angered, lunged at him with a powerful strike. Errol easily blocked the attack, astonishing his opponent, who started swinging wildly, but Errol parried every blow with impressive skill. When the second friend tried to attack from behind, Errol leaped aside deftly, realizing these boys couldn't measure up to his mother in combat and that facing them together would be more fun. He charged at them quickly, knocking one down with a strike from the hilt of his sword to his chin, causing the other to trip over his fallen friend and fall as well. The two sat crying and complaining about the unfairness when a red-haired boy entered the yard, commanding them to shut up and act as if they were in a real battlefield. The defeated boys, without the protection surrounding them, would have lost their lives in that moment. Errol didn't recognize the red-haired boy, but the latter seemed to know him well, walking confidently toward him and challenging him to a public duel. He claimed his victory over the two was solely due to an innate talent inherited from his mother, the Saint of the Sword, and said that as long as Errol was without a rank, he wouldn't be able to stand against someone with both rank and formal training. Then he announced he was the son of Captain Evans, the leader of the village guard. Errol remembered the captain when he came to his mother seeking her help some time ago, but the boy bore no resemblance to his sturdy father. The red-haired boy erupted in angry complaints that people always regarded Errol's mother as the strongest, despite his father also being an experienced duelist. He wanted to prove that his family deserved the glory and that he would do so by defeating Errol. They squared off, and as soon as the duel began, the red-haired boy charged aggressively, wanting to end it quickly. However, Errol, used to relentless training with his mother, met the attacks with solid defense and equal speed, turning their rapid movements into a breathtaking spectacle for the amazed onlookers. Errol realized his opponent was stronger than the previous two, but fought with a rage that made him chaotic. Errol waited for an opportunity to strike. However, the red-haired boy anticipated his move and launched a double aerial strike. Errol blocked one, but the other hit him in the chest, knocking him down. Stunned by that amazing blow, he understood that his opponent had used a skill that could only be learned by someone with a specific rank. Days passed since that defeat, but the fire of determination reignited within him. He ventured into the forest armed with his sword, standing before a practice dummy, tearing at it with strikes repeatedly until he finally managed to replicate the double blow that had defeated him. Before he could celebrate his achievement, a little imp leaped out from the bushes, trying to ambush him. Errol quickly turned and unleashed his double strike, cutting the imp down and killing it instantly. He felt excited about gaining a new skill, but a thunderous roar echoed from deep within the forest, making him shudder. Wanting to rush back to the village to warn the guards, a cry for help from a boy within froze him in place. He realized time wouldn't spare those who were absent, so he dashed into the woods, hiding until he spotted the injured boy, who turned out to be none other than his red-haired opponent, bleeding and clutching his sword in front of a massive rare breed imp that usually stayed away from villages. He hesitated momentarily between running for help and staying, knowing the boy would die if left alone. He crept up behind the creature, and when the imp was about to finish off its prey, Errol struck with a powerful double blow, slicing through the creature and killing it instantly. The red-haired boy stood frozen, stunned not only by the sudden removal of danger, but also because Errol had executed the skill he hadn't learned until years of training with the help of his rank. Errol approached him and offered a pure water flask to tend to his wounds. The red-haired boy, curious, asked Errol the secret behind his ability to perform that lethal strike. Errol replied that it wasn't about having a rank, but having the skill, strength, and speed necessary to repeat it. He explained that after his previous defeat, he spent a long time analyzing the double strikes and trained repeatedly until he understood their basis, becoming able to adjust them at will. The boy wasn't completely convinced and challenged him to a new duel, to which Errol confidently agreed. The two stood facing each other, and as soon as they unleashed their strikes simultaneously, the boy was surprised to find that Errol not only blocked his attack but added a third strike that hit him and knocked him down. The captain's son erupted in anger, but Errol explained that he didn't adhere to any specific skill limited by boundaries or constraints, and that his strength and skill defined his potential, allowing him to increase the number of strikes whenever he was capable. The boy got up, trying to take revenge in another round, but he received the third strike again with even greater force and fell once more, allowing Errol to leave the arena victorious. 5 years passed since that day until he decided to embark on a journey to the kingdom of Brea, known for its swordsmanship, where both his mother and Captain Evans received their training. He wanted to become the best like them. Along the way, he was accompanied by travelers, including a burly man with the rank of a berserker warrior and a woman with high skill in dual-wielding swords, who never ceased to argue and quarrel. The carriage driver tried to calm them, reminding them they were heading to the same place, but the man treated the woman with disdain, saying she was only fit for household chores. Before the dispute escalated, the driver shouted for them to prepare for battle, as a group of orcs, led by their gigantic leader, appeared before them, intent on their destruction. 2 children in the carriage screamed for help from the warrior, but he cowered and fled, saying each life was their own responsibility, while the woman followed him, claiming the world had no mercy for the weak. The driver remained perplexed, wondering if he could save his carriage before the enemies caught up, but Errol calmly exited the carriage and approached the beasts without a word. The driver tried to dissuade him from confronting them, but he ignored him and dashed with astonishing speed, stabbing the first orc in the heart faster than anyone could believe. His movements were lightning fast, disappearing and reappearing among the enemies while cutting them down one by one. When he found himself surrounded, he amazed everyone with a legendary move known as the Blade Dance, spinning around swiftly to slice through all who were nearby at once. The driver was astonished since that skill was known to be exclusive to female fighters holding the rank of Princess of the Sword, but Errol was not bound by such classifications. He believed that skill was not defined by gender or title. He then charged at the orc leader, dodged its massive strikes, and jumped over it, driving his sword into its head until it fell dead. He returned to the carriage calmly, asking the driver to continue the journey to Brea. While one of the children asked about his rank, he simply answered that he had no rank, leaving everyone in shock. He recalled showing his mother his new skill with the double strikes 5 years earlier, and she thought she was imagining things until he clarified that he aimed to replicate every skill he saw. At that, she was filled with happiness and promised to teach him all the skills known to the princesses of the sword. Currently, the driver woke Errol up, announcing they had arrived at Briasta, the land of swords. Errol stepped out of the carriage and saw the city square bustling with fighters whose swords hung at their waists. He turned to the driver and asked if he was an advanced-level duelist. The man claimed he was just an ordinary driver, but Errol sensed that someone who knew intricate combat movements couldn't be simple. The driver then admitted he held the rank of the Holy Knights, a prestigious rank, but he grew tired of constant fighting and chose a life of quietness by masquerading as a humble driver. The knight realized it was Errol's first visit to the city and advised him to look for a guild to join, as no duelist could participate in tournaments without official affiliation. In this city, duels were a way to prove one's worth and earn a living. Errol replied that he wasn't interested in money but sought to compete against the strongest duelist he could find there. The driver warned him about greedy guilds that exploit fighters and corrupt their spirits, then turned and walked away, while Errol continued down the path, gazing at the signs of guilds competing for members. As he walked, he bumped into a small blonde girl who immediately clung to him, claiming to be from a famous guild and wanting to recruit him. Her insistence struck him as suspicious, so he declined her offer, but she didn't give up and kept pushing. He didn't engage with her and asked her which guild was the strongest in the city. She answered grouchily that the Shadowblade Guild was currently the best, boasting 8 rank-holding duelists. He asked her to guide him to its location and set off. At its gate, the guard directed him to the reception desk, where a long line of aspiring duelists awaited the test. Errol felt excitement as he wondered what kind of opponents he would face. When his turn came, the receptionist mocked him, labeling him with no rank as inconsequential, insisting that the guild only accepted high-ranking applicants. He tried to convince her of his ability to pass their test, but she refused to register him. He left, feeling disheartened, and saw 3 high-ranking duelists entering the hall, welcomed with great reverence, but he dismissed it and headed to other guilds, only to meet the same rejection repeatedly. The rejection weighed heavily on him as he returned to the city center. He took out the letter his mother had given him, asking him to seek out their old guild, hoping it might help him. He wondered if she had anticipated the struggles he would face and felt grateful to her. Before he could open the letter, the blonde girl appeared again, urging him to join, pleading with him to do it as a favor, pointing to a nearby fancy building that she claimed was the headquarters of her guild. He seemed surprised, and she told him that their guild, Dragon's Fangs, had once been the strongest in the land, but had weakened greatly recently, hoping to revive its former glory. The name echoed in his memory as he recalled his mother's stories about the leader of her old guild, a dual-wielding fighter who founded the Dragon's Fangs and named it after his special attack. He quickly pulled out the letter and found the same name written in it. He decided to accompany her, which filled her with joy. However, when he entered the building, he found an old man with one hand lying on the couch, who coldly informed him that this guild was finished and advised him to leave. The girl explained that this was her father and that he had been the second strongest fighter in the city, but he had not been the same after losing his arm. Errol surprised her by expressing his desire to join, which made her happy, and she rushed to prepare the membership contract, which he filled out and handed back to her. She read it and then asked why he had left the rank section blank. He replied that he had no rank. At that moment, her anger flared, and she drew her sword, thinking she had been tricked, believing he was an advanced fighter pretending to be reluctant. Just then, the door opened, and a woman with deep red hair and majestic beauty named Ray entered. The girl rushed to her, crying that this rankless stranger had deceived her to join the guild. The mention of the blonde girl immediately caught Ray's attention, and she turned her gaze to Errol, saying she had never thought she would see him here one day. He looked confused and asked if she knew him before, and she seemed stunned, telling him they were from the same village and had trained together as children. At first, he did not remember, until he realized that the boy with red hair he had fought several times was not a boy at all, but this very girl. The blonde girl knew the story and asked Ray if this was the rankless boy who had once defeated her, as she thought what she had heard about him was just a legend. However, Ray, who had never forgotten that defeat, challenged him to an immediate duel. The fight began, and Ray launched her double attack, which Errol thought he could block. However, her strikes broke through his defenses and hit him in the chest with astonishing force. He was taken aback, and she explained that she was of the strength fighter rank, which allowed her to wield a sword 5 times heavier than regular swords, making her strikes 5 times more powerful as well. Errol admired her ability to maintain high speed, despite the heavy weapon, but he knew her speed could not match his. When she attacked him again, he created a deceptive image of himself that confused her, appearing behind her and striking her in the back. She attempted to repeat the attack, but the result was the same, leaving her astonished by his use of a technique only higher-ranked fighters could master. Errol realized that her sturdy body would not be defeated by regular strikes, and she, in turn, tried to finish the fight with a decisive blow, but he surprised her with a famous defensive maneuver from his mother's style, bringing her down to her knees and ending the bout. At that point, Ray's demeanor completely changed, warmly welcoming him into the guild, revealing that the guild was deep in debt, and their only way to survive was to compete in combat tournaments as a team of 3 against guilds with 5 fighters. Yet, Errol showed no signs of worry. Instead, he was filled with enthusiasm to face stronger opponents and refine his skills even further. The next morning, he woke up in his new room, reflecting on the events that led him to join the legendary guild his mother was part of, promising himself not to disappoint her and to restore the guild's former glory. He went out into the hall and found the blonde girl and Ray sitting by the fireplace discussing the upcoming tournament. As soon as the blonde girl saw him, she pulled him into the conversation, saying that the tournament would start next week and that they were now eligible to participate with 3 members instead of 2. She explained that the tournament would be knockout style with individual matches and that most guilds would have 5 fighters, meaning they would have to defeat more than one opponent to survive the first round. Nevertheless, she remained optimistic, assuring him that having 2 ranked fighters in the B tier would give them a good balance unless they faced a fighter from a higher rank. Errol was unaware of these ranks, so he asked her about them. She explained that there were 5 ranks starting from D for beginners and ending with TAD, which only the elite could achieve, and that there were only 20 fighters in Briasta within that top rank. She boasted that both she and Ray were in the B rank, and since Errol had defeated Ray in battle, he was also a fighter of the same level. With the guild having 3 fighters of the same category, they now had hope to at least get past the first round. Then she headed to the kitchen, leaving Errol lost in thought. On her way out of the hall, Ray was stopped by Errol, who asked her about her abilities as a strength fighter. Still annoyed about her defeat, she replied that one of her skills was strengthening the external mana armor to deflect most weak attacks. Errol remained silent, thinking about how he could learn such a valuable technique until a new idea sparked in his mind. Errol asked Ray to strike him with her sword while it was sheathed, which surprised her, and she initially refused, but he took her hand asking her to do it. She thought he was suggesting something odd, unrelated to training, and responded with a coy smile, but she didn't completely object, suggesting they start with something more normal. At that point, Errol realized the misunderstanding between them, clarifying that he wanted her to hit him to teach him how to strengthen the external mana armor, a useful skill in fighting multiple opponents where the chances of getting hit increase. Ray was astonished by his request and asked if he had lost his mind, insisting that skills were granted by a divine influence that could not be learned through trying. However, Errol, having rejected such beliefs, urged her to stop protesting, reminding her that she had seen him acquire skills not naturally born with, like the double sword strike and the quick dash. Ray fell silent and decided to give it a try just once. They went to the training ground, where she handed him her sword, warning that it was 5 times heavier than any ordinary sword, and that without strength skills, he wouldn't even be able to lift it. But Errol surprised her when he grasped the sword and drew it fluidly, then waved it with astonishing ease, leaving her stunned, wondering how he could do all that without a rank or inherited skill. He told her he had learned nothing but through perseverance and daily training, and that he meant to match the talented ones with his relentless effort. Ray's expression changed from intensity to admiration as she apologized for her mockery, taking back her sword and vowing not to go easy on him in training. He agreed, but then tried to joke with her, and she promptly hit him in the face with the hilt of her sword while laughing. A little later, the blonde girl rushed into the training area, breathless and flustered, informing them that she had discovered the guild they would face, and the news was bad. Their opponent was none other than the Shadowblade Guild, the strongest in the city, led by their famous brutal and cunning leader, Gio. Despite that, the blonde girl showed no signs of backing down, instead delivering a passionate passionate speech, vowing that they would give their all to win. She then turned to Errol, who was lying on the ground exhausted after a tough training session, asking if he was still alive. Ray assured her that he was fine, and that what they were doing was specialized training, but the blonde girl thought she was just taking out her anger on him. Errol got up, complaining about hunger after all he had endured, and requested food. The week flew by amid training and preparations, until the day of the tournament arrived. Crowds gathered from all over the land in the grand amphitheater, and Errol stood astonished by the enormity of the place. He heard the blonde girl seething with rage as she overheard whispers mocking their guild, which had collapsed long ago, while Ray tried to calm her down. Errol noticed that people were betting on the teams, and he inquired about the odds, with the blonde girl replying that their chances were estimated at 20-1, meaning no one believed they could win. He tried to compliment the odds, but she angrily retorted, explaining that everyone saw them as certain losers. However, that could work to their advantage, as a surprise victory would bring them a windfall. Her excitement grew until she admitted that she had bet everything, putting the guild's headquarters on the line for a new loan. If they won, their fate would change, and they would regain their former glory. If they lost, there would be nothing left to lose. While she was speaking, a man from the crowd called out to her, and it was Gio himself, the leader of the Shadow Blade. He approached them mockingly, scoffing at their dilapidated guild, and revealing that he had arranged for their first clash to deliver the final blow to what little reputation they had left. He mockingly promised her that if, by some miracle, they won, her guild would become the greatest in the land, but that was impossible as long as it had a rankless fighter in its ranks. He laughed at his own scheme and left, leaving the team to prepare to enter the arena. As they stepped inside, Errol noticed that Gio himself would not be participating in the fight, which he thought might slightly improve their odds of survival. Ray pointed out that all their opponents were of the higher tier, making the outcome nearly a foregone conclusion, especially since their current lineup was unusually offensive. When the awaited moment arrived, the announcer's voice boomed in the arena, declaring the start of the match between the Dragon's Fangs Guild and the Shadow Blade Guild. From the opposing side stepped a green-haired boy of the light sword fighter rank, boasting that he would take down the entire team by himself. The audience's astonishment grew when the announcer declared that the representative of Dragon's Fangs was Errol, the rankless fighter. The green-haired fighter smiled derisively, insisting that taking down a rankless opponent wouldn't take him long, but he saw it as an opportunity to show off in front of the crowd, racing forward and stabbing Errol in the chest. Gasps of shock erupted in the arena as it became clear that what had been stabbed was nothing but a deceptive shadow. The fighter turned around in shock, then lunged forward again to face another image, and soon multiple moving images of Errol swirled around him. He decided to end it quickly, attacking all of them with swift blows, and in the next moment, he felt the true stab piercing his body from behind. Errol had created 3 images at once, a technique known as one of the hardest to master. The opponent fell to the ground, and the round ended while Errol told them that his mother had trained with him using 5 images at the same time, and that was when she was going easy on him. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers for the rankless fighter, amazed by what they had just witnessed. As for him, he continued to think that executing the same technique his opponent had used was not yet perfect, and he needed to refine it further. He entered the next round against a double sword fighter who launched a flurry of strikes at him, but Errol blocked them all, finishing the fight with a double strike that knocked his opponent down. With the second fighter falling, he faced a third who wielded 2 inverted daggers, utilizing fast combat moves mixed with body arts. However, Errol's speed surpassed all that, with a blow from behind that sent him crashing to the ground. Ray and the blonde girl watched in awe as they witnessed with their own eyes how 3 high-ranking fighters were defeated without breaking a sweat, filling the blonde with hope for the possibility of victory. But the 4th round proved to be much tougher. Errol faced a duelist skilled in sword and shield, whose defense was hard to penetrate. He couldn't land decisive blows, so he had to dodge and gradually weaken the opponent's armor. The opponent yelled angrily that it was impossible to be rankless, to which Errol replied that everything he had achieved was the result of daily effort and hard work, nothing more. The fighter scoffed at the talk of effort, insisting that only talent dictates the outcome of a duel, then charged at him with a skillful shield rush. However, Errol used the foresight technique inherited from his mother, reading the opponent's movement and knocking down his shield with a sudden kick, then borrowed a combat move from his previous opponent to deliver a kick to his gut. He picked up the shield and lunged forward as his opponent tried to rise to attack again, but Errol countered the blow and struck back with the same attack, throwing him to the ground, defeated. The audience erupted in debate, accusing him of hiding his true rank, prompting the organizers to summon the magical revealing orb and announce to everyone that he was indeed rankless. The cheers grew louder as Errol stood firm while his next opponent was announced, the Eastern duelist Masamune, a descendant of samurai wielding a curved sword known as the katana. The moment Errol stepped into the arena, he felt an underlying danger in Masamune's presence and realized that this battle wouldn't be like the previous ones, bracing himself as he sensed his opponent preparing to unleash his ultimate skill, waiting for the perfect moment to strike like a poised snake. Errol approached his opponent with confident steps, driven by curiosity despite the danger. As soon as he entered Masamune's sword range, the latter lunged at him in a flash, but Errol was quicker, disappearing from in front of him and appearing behind him in an instant. The Eastern duelist's eyes widened in shock as Errol informed him that he truly was the fastest in the city, though his mother was much faster, so he had grown accustomed to keeping up with speed like his. In a decisive move, Errol utilized the ultimate skill of the Princess of the Sword School, showering his opponent with precise, successive thrusts that ended the fight in moments. Silence fell over the arena, and astonishment filled the faces. The weakest fighter in the weakest guild had single-handedly taken down the strongest members of the strongest guild in the land. Errol exited the fighting area heading towards Ray and the blonde girl, feeling reassured that they had had gained enough to save the guild from its debts. In the evening, they returned to their headquarters, and a celebratory atmosphere took hold. The place was filled with laughter and drinks, and Errol remained astonished that the blonde could drink, as she assured him she was a mature adult despite her small appearance. She still couldn't believe he had defeated 5 high-ranking fighters from the most renowned guild in the kingdom, all by himself. Her mind filled with plans to exploit this glory, and she began to think of ways to get closer to him to restore their guild's status. She tried to charm him with pleasant conversation and subtle flattery, but Errol firmly rejected her, stating that he preferred Ray, causing her face to flush and her anger to rise, thinking he was just teasing to rid himself of the blonde. However, he was sincere. Ray snapped back, saying that he had called her boy during their duel in the past, and that everyone had said she lacked femininity. Errol told her that her personality had enough strength and beauty, and that she was wrong in her thoughts. The blonde, meanwhile, smiled slyly, realizing that Ray didn't yet recognize her strengths, so she dropped the discussion and decided to take care of Errol, asserting he needed rest after his long battles. However, Errol preferred that his rest be in the training arena, asking Ray to help him master the magic shield enhancement technique she easily performed due to her rank. She began hitting him hard in a tough training session while the blonde watched from the balcony, astonished by his strange understanding of the concept of rest. The noise attracted the girl's father, who stumbled out, disoriented by drink, complaining about the sound, believing they were venting their frustrations after losing the championship. His daughter quickly informed him that they had actually defeated the strongest guild in the city. At first, he didn't believe her and thought the opponent had sent lower-ranked trainees, but she clarified that they were all high-ranking and that Errol had defeated them by himself. The man snapped out of his drunken haze and stared at the battered boy with curiosity about his true strength. His daughter proudly told him she had bet on their victory, winning a huge wager thanks to him, and that they were now free from debts and had enough to continue the guild's work. But the father remained reserved, pointing out that if the boy was indeed that strong, major guilds would be scrambling to recruit him with hefty payments, so she shouldn't get her hopes up. However, the girl confidently replied that she would resolve the issue by marrying him to keep him by their side forever. At that, Errol clearly stated he wouldn't do anything of the sort, then turned to her father, continuing his talk with certainty, mocking her stubbornness and lack of understanding. Errol's final words were that she, the girl, was at least not a loser who surrendered to everything, and that was a clear jab at her father. The man glared at him with a heated look, but Errol didn't notice and boldly criticized him further, demanding he stop complaining and live up to his age, as long as he still had a hand to fight with. This enraged the father, who lunged at him, grabbing his collar, warning him not to speak about things he didn't understand, declaring that a dual-wield duelist who lost one arm was just an empty body with no use. But Errol answered him steadily that what he said wasn't true, as even being a rankless duelist, he was still striving and fighting to rise in this world. The man pushed him away and retreated silently upstairs. Ray and Loli quickly approached to check on him, with the girl apologizing for her father's behavior and thanking him for his courage in defending himself. Errol commented that her father, despite losing an arm and a fighting life, still retained significant strength and invaluable experience, and that refusing to use it was a genuine loss. He thought to himself that he might learn amazing skills from him if he could motivate him to return to sword fighting, resolving to awaken the duelist spirit within him once more. Loli heard Errol's determination to acquire new skills and suggested that he start by exploring the dungeons scattered near the city. He appeared perplexed, so Ray explained that the dungeons were deep caves where monsters spawned by the dozens and filled with traps, making them perfect places to gain experience and hone real skills in preparation for major competitions, especially the Sword Gods Cup and the annual championship, featuring the best duelists in the country to prove who was strongest. Errol had never heard of it before, so Loli pulled out a form and invited him to fill it out if he wanted to participate, but to their surprise, Errol ripped the paper in front of them, leaving Ray stunned and asking him if he didn't want to enter the competition. He replied that he had uncovered Loli's trick, which was trying to pass off a marriage contract instead of the form. She laughed, admitting she had been testing his reaction, but Errol didn't let her off easy, grabbing her to discipline her for her heavy teasing. The next morning, he woke up to find her trying to mess with him again, so he distanced himself and tied her to the bed before leaving. Later, they all gathered and headed to one of the dungeons. Loli explained that entry was through magical transport circles that sent fighters to the level they had previously reached, saying she had made it to the 12th level while Ray had reached the 14th. Errol expressed his desire to accompany Ray to her level, but Loli clarified that the rules only allowed those who had actually set foot on that level before. He felt disappointed as he hoped to face stronger monsters from the beginning, but Loli reassured him that she knew a shortcut to lower levels quickly. He agreed to the plan, but then the girl tried to isolate him under the pretense that Ray could continue her adventure alone, but Errol saw through it and insisted that Ray join them. The three entered the first level, and as soon as they took a few steps, two armored knights attacked them from the sides. Errol drew his sword to face one while Ray defended against the other. He was astonished to notice that despite their heavy armor, the knights moved with an unexpected grace, but it wasn't speed beyond his capacity to confront. Errol lunged forward with a swift step, cutting off the knight's head with a sharp strike, but he quickly realized that the armor in front of him was completely hollow, moved by the mana energy emanating from the heart of the dungeon. Errol then changed his strategy, brought the knight down, while Ray finished her battle at the same moment, warning that the enchanted armors would soon regain their strength and urging them to keep advancing. Before they moved, Errol asked Loli about her rank, and she proudly replied that she was in the light sword duelist class, offering to teach him whatever he wanted in the training ground or outside of it. He brushed her off again and continued walking. Just before they entered the second level, they heard a cry for help coming from behind behind one of the doors. They approached cautiously to find a bloodied man kneeling and begging for their assistance. Ray suggested taking him to the surface, but he firmly refused, saying that his companions were still inside, injured by a trap that exploded on them, pleading for them to help rescue them. Loli hurried to talk about the fee before helping, and the man handed her a large sum of money, which astonished her. But Erol, who was walking behind him, noticed that someone losing all that blood couldn't even stand without pure water, so how was he moving so easily? He understood that the blood and wounds were fake, but he chose to remain silent out of curiosity and a desire to see what would happen. The man led them to a hidden room scattered with traces of blood, at the center of which was a small pool containing a single gold coin. As soon as Loli saw the gold, she bent down to pick it up, and suddenly a magical circle ignited beneath their feet. Ray realized it was a trap, while the man smiled proudly, saying he got paid handsomely for this easy job, but he was surprised to find himself transported with them in the same circle. They landed in a level Ray had never seen before, lower than even the 14th floor, and there were no monsters in sight yet. The deceitful man trembled as he said they had reached the deepest point in the dungeon, where it was said that the of the sword fighter resides. Moments later, a giant knight appeared before them, wearing armor glittering in the colors of the spectrum. Loli denied the whole story, calling it an unbelievable legend, while Erol felt the weight of danger and threw her to the ground, just as the unknown knight launched an airstrike that demolished the room's walls. The sword knight attacked Erol directly, and Erol barely lifted his sword in time to block the blow. Although he crashed against the wall, he realized he was spared thanks to his extensive training, enhancing the magical armor under Ray's guidance. Erol smiled, saying that this was a perfect opportunity to test his strength, which shocked his companions. He launched himself with the same divine speed step his opponent used, closing the distance and unleashing a flurry of successive strikes that the knight skillfully deflected, and then he unleashed a skill that intensified gravity in the hall, knocking everyone to the ground. However, Erol stood firm in his place, having trained under similar conditions with his mother when he was a young boy. Back then, he couldn't hold on, but now, things were different. He took out the gold coin that Loli had picked up and used it to dispel the skill's effect, creating a small gap in his opponent's defense, which he immediately seized to unleash one of his strongest techniques, called Endless Break, which shattered the knight's armor into scattered shards. Everyone froze at the sight, and then Erol used pure water to restore his energy. They all reactivated the transport spell to safely exit the dungeon. Meanwhile, Rod, Loli's father, was sitting in a tavern, drowning in drink, when he heard three young men bragging that they had tricked the new members of the Dragonfangs Guild and sent them to a trap from which they wouldn't escape. He approached them angrily, smashing their table with his fist, demanding to know the truth, but one of them, named Jorg, intervened mockingly, calling him a worthless drunk. Rod realized then that Jorg was behind the scheme, and he attacked him fiercely, driven by despair for his daughter whom he thought was lost. The tavern door opened, and Loli walked in, talking to Ray and Erol about being hungry after their adventure. When Rod saw his daughter, he rushed to her, embracing her and thanking God for her safety. Ray confronted Jorg, announcing that they had extracted a confession from one of his henchmen who exposed his conspiracy, but he, as usual, denied it, claiming that anyone who enters the dungeons is responsible for themselves. Erol admitted to himself that there was some truth in his words, but Rod interrupted, threatening his opponent that he wouldn't get away with what he did, while Jorg merely continued mocking, calling him an old drunk, and left, leaving Erol wondering what new schemes awaited them. Lelia was sitting with Ray looking over the competition papers that they would be participating in, and she discovered that Ariel was in the same group as her, which caused her to feel very annoyed. Then Ariel came to them and asked them if there was a competition or not, but Ray told Ariel about the existence of a large number of competitors in this competition, though it was only preliminary, which led to Lelia feeling very frustrated because of the presence of strong fighters. However, Ariel assured her that she should feel confident and that her level was actually good, but Lelia felt that he was telling her this just to reassure her, when she knew very well that her level was not the best. Then Ray met Ariel while she was getting to know the fighters in her group, but Ray discovered that her group had many strong fighters, yet she vowed that she would win the competition this year. But Ariel told her that her father would provide her with many things, which made her feel happy, but she wanted to rely on herself more. Lelia also had strong fighters in her group, but she didn't give up. However, this meant they were heading to the dungeon again today, and Ariel asked if he should go. Lelia suggested that he should be there to rescue them if something bad happened, and here Ray thought that Ariel never took matters into his own hands. Then Lelia's father came when he learned that he would be training in the dungeon and asked him to be careful because George might have set another trap for Lelia. He asked her that if she felt danger, to run away immediately. Lelia told her father that she would do this. Then she left, but afterward, Lelia's father felt that his fear for Lelia had increased, but he had to play the role of a father and stop drinking to become a strong fighter like them too. We moved to the competition arena where many combat matches took place, and among them was Lelia's fight, but Lelia suffered a loss, which caused her to feel sad while she was alone. Then Ariel came to her and consoled her so she wouldn't grieve. He told her that he wished he could face her in the eliminations, which made Lelia feel that he was pitying her with his words. But Lelia asked Ariel to be careful in his upcoming fight and wished him victory. She gave him some information about his opponent and pointed things out to warn him about his strength. But Ariel didn't feel scared at all and told her that he had faced strong fighters in the dungeon too. But Lelia told Ariel that this was a strong female fighter who uses magic in her combat, and she enchants her sword, which results in powerful strikes. But Ariel was surprised that there was a fighter using magic who entered the competition. But Lelia told Ariel that the guild allows them because they are registered with the guild. Then the fighters were called to the arena, and Lelia wished victory for Ariel. Then Ariel advanced to the arena to face his opponent. Then the opponent told Ariel that she didn't want to hear from him that he lost because of magic, and that she uses magic, and that it's unfair. But Ariel had another opinion, that the strongest fighter is the one who will win. Then the fight began, and Ariel's opponent started launching fireballs at him. But Ariel dodged all the fireballs skillfully until he was able to attack his opponent. But the girl blocked Ariel's strike and almost hit him, but she couldn't. Here Ariel saw that his opponent had strong and wonderful skills too, because she used both magic and a sword at the same time. But the girl didn't accept a compliment from Ariel because she thought he wasn't strong enough to evaluate her. She told him that she would use her strongest strikes. Then she used magic on her sword, transforming it into a sword of fire, and delivered a powerful blow to Ariel. Here, Ariel began to block the strikes, but he said to himself that these strikes were powerful, and that he couldn't predict where the strike would come from. But Ariel possessed strong skills and was able to block all the strikes easily. He described his opponent as not strong enough, and similar to Lelia's skill level, and here Lelia thought this was an insult to her, which angered the girl. But here Ariel showed her the extent of his strength, and was able to nullify her magic and transform her fire sword back into a normal sword. He attacked her and was able to deliver a strike that caused his opponent to lose consciousness. Then Ariel thought that there were many things he could learn in the City of Swords, and if he did some training, he could learn magic too. After a few days, we move to Lelia's house where she is trying to wake her father, so he goes with her to watch the final fight between Ariel and his new opponent. But her father doesn't want this and refuses to go. But Lelia tried again with him, but he didn't agree either. But here Lelia thought that her father was afraid to go because of meeting George. But Lelia's father told her to be quiet, and that he wasn't afraid of George. He confessed to her that yesterday he picked up his sword, and that he's not like he was before, and it's hard for him to even win the sword cup. But Lelia explained to him that he should consider the feelings of people who can't even enter the main championship, and asked him to prepare right away so they could go watch Ariel. She insisted on this very much, and grabbed him and dragged him there. While they were on the way, Lelia asked her father that he would have gone to watch the fight secretly if she hadn't come with him, right? This surprised her father, and he asked her why. Then she remembered in the past her father's training with Ray, and that he used to love seeing his team members make progress, and now he would watch one of them in his final fight and making progress too. Then we moved to the arena, and Ray was feeling very disturbed until Ariel came to her and asked her why all this disturbance. But Ray told him not to stand in front of her like that. So Ariel sat in front of her, and Ray told Ariel that this competition was the best competition in the world, so naturally she would feel nervous. But what was difficult for her was facing someone she knew nothing about, and it was difficult to come up with any plan before the fight. But Ariel thought she was afraid of facing him in the final round. Here, Ray tried to strike him, but Ariel caught her hand at that same moment. Then they announced the previous fight, and it turned out that Ariel's opponent was George, which caused Ray to feel worried about Ariel. And when Ariel began to move, Ray grabbed his hand and asked him to be careful because George was a very strong fighter. Then Ariel moved to the combat arena to face George. Lelia was there to cheer him on and called out to him, asking him to defeat George. And when George appeared, his appearance was very terrifying, which caused Lelia to worry about Ariel. And when Lelia's father saw George, and that he had become like a monster, he asked Ariel to retreat immediately, because he possessed the strongest sword in the world. Lelia asked about the strongest sword in the world, but her father told her that this sword contains a sealed demon inside. Here George was surprised that there was someone who recognized his sword, and he asked Lelia's father if he was from the imperial court. But here Lelia was surprised that George didn't recognize her father. But Lelia's father thought that George had been taken over by the sealed demon, and the legend says that the blade that the sword's master used to kill the demon was cursed out of revenge, and should have been removed and kept under strict guard in the royal vault. He asks how it got here, but George was the one who broke the seal that held him back, and he waited for this for hundreds of years until everyone who remembered him died, and it became forgotten history. He knew that someone would eventually search for his power, and he had no choice but to wait until someone came and freed him. And he introduced himself as Dur, and he now wants to enjoy destroying the place and spreading chaos. Then Ray advanced toward Ariel and informed him that it was Dwyer, and Ariel was amazed and asked Ray if she knew him. But Ray told him that Dwyer had a very ancient history because he was a demon that was summoned by the Great Evil One in ancient times, and the matter seemed as if it was not a legend. Then the discussions multiplied among the spectators about Dwyer because he had killed many people before, which led them to feel fear, and they ran quickly, leaving the arena. But this fear that people felt is what Dwyer loved, and he also preferred to listen to their screams. Then Dwyer used his power and displayed a demonic force that led to sealing the entire place so that no one could leave the fortress, which led to people feeling intense intense anxiety. But George was in complete happiness from all of this because he believed that this is what humans deserve, which is death. However, he looked ahead and found Ariel completely prepared for him. But Dwyer believed that Ariel wanted death because he insisted on challenging him. But Ariel told Dwyer that he had been killed through the great legendary sword, and that he was confident he could kill him too. And he also told him that he was undefeatable. But Dwyer mocked Ariel's words and admitted that he had been killed before by the great sword, but he no longer exists now among the living, and now there is no one capable of defeating him. But Ariel had something he wanted to happen with Dwyer. The first point was that the great sword still exists, and the second point was that Ariel could defeat Dwyer. But Dwyer saw this as mere nonsense. But suddenly Ariel attacked Dwyer with great force and used his speed to direct multiple blows at him, which led to Dwyer being surprised by Ariel's strength. But Dwyer did not stand idle and told Ariel not to forget that he was the body of the Sword Emperor, and attacked Ariel, directing a powerful blow at him, and he thought he had defeated him. But Ariel was completely unharmed, which led to Dwyer's amazement at Ariel's strength, and Dwyer asked how this happened. But Ariel had gained courage and strength through his training with Ray, which led to Dwyer's great anger, and he attacked Ariel, but he could not hit him. Then Ariel gathered his strength and attacked Dwyer, directing multiple quick blows at him, which led to injuring Dwyer, and Dwyer thought that Ariel was the great sword. But Ariel told Dwyer that he was just a classless warrior, and directed a final blow at him that pushed him away and prevented him from moving. Then Ariel approached Dwyer and believed he could no longer move or fight. But Dwyer said to himself that he must enter someone else's body so he could escape from Ariel, and began searching because he wanted someone with a strong structure. Then he chose Lilia's father, and while Lilia was checking on Ariel and Ray, George dropped the sword from his hand and attacked Lilia, but her father defended her, which led to the demon spirit possessing Lilia's father, and he became the demon was Lilia's father, and he threatened Ariel that if he did not leave, he would kill Lilia. And here Ariel discovered that he should have broken the sword instead of killing George. But the demon told him that he would not be able to do that because he would kill Lilia, his fiancée, which led to Ariel's surprise at the word fiancé. Then Ariel told the demon that Lilia was not his fiancée, but the demon said that he had taken control of Lilia's father's memory, and the information he had was that Lilia was Ariel's fiancée, which led to Lilia feeling embarrassed by this and asked the demon not to reveal this. But here Ariel threatened the demon and Lilia, saying he would kill both of them, and here Ray tried to stop him from doing so. Then the demon asked Ariel if he really did not care about Lilia, and here Ariel told the demon that he did not care about Lilia, and that people who have no value should be killed. But Lilia saw this as the worst thing Ariel had ever said to her. Then the demon asked Lilia to explain to him whether she was his fiancée or not, and here Lilia cried and told him that this talk was only in her mind, and that it was wishful thinking on her part, and that he was not her husband at all, which led to the demon's great anger, and the demon asked why he should preserve garbage like her with no value. Then Ariel thought that Lilia had brought this upon herself, but Ray thought that the demon could not kill Lilia, but the demon said that he could do that, and he would cut the girl to pieces. But suddenly his entire body froze, and Lilia's father appeared, and was able to stop his body, and did not give the demon the right to use his body completely, and he was able to free his daughter. And here Ray asked what was happening now. But Ariel believed that what was happening was the opposite of what happened with George, and that he did not change his appearance at all when he possessed him, and that Lilia's father was resisting him from inside, and Lilia believed that her father was much stronger than George. Then the demon said to Lilia's father to let him use his body, and that he wanted the power to restore his glory. But Lilia's father did not agree to this, and told him that if he had come to him a short time ago, it might have been possible to agree. But after meeting Ariel, he was assured that he could restore his glory without anyone's help, and asked the demon to leave his body, and he threw the sword far away. Then the sword traveled in its path toward Ariel, and Ariel prepared for it well, and directed a blow at it that led to the sword breaking completely, and the destruction of the demon. And the black mana was removed, and the exits were opened, and Ariel affirmed that this should have disappeared forever.